Hello, good evening. Today is Thursday, December 31st, 2020, and I'm Bhavani Thuraisingam from the University of Texas at Dallas. And I'm going to continue with the video presentations. And my talk today is going to be on social media governance and fake news detection. So just to give some background, I have been giving, video, sort of taping video presentations since we started working from home in March 2020 during COVID-19. And so I started taping my keynote presentations. So from March to December, actually, I've given 17 keynotes and 11 panels, as well as various other conference talks and podcast and some other stuff. So before I give a keynote address, and if I can, a panel talk, and even the conference talks, I always videotape it as a placeholder presentation because some conferences require, but most don't. And so, because just in case there's a technology glitch, because you never know. And so I usually give the presentations live, but if there is a technology glitch, then, I use my video presentations. And so all the video presentations are now on my YouTube, uploaded on my YouTube channel. And so most of them are my keynote addresses, some panel talks, as well as some conference talks. But more recently, especially this week, starting 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, and today is the sixth one, I'm giving some more general talks, some of the key presentations, major presentations I've given over the past several years. So sometime in June, I gave a talk on multi-level secure database systems. That's the work that many of us did in the 1980s and 1990s. And so I talked about that because today hardly anyone discusses that. And so I think it's important for historical purposes to have it documented somewhere. And I'm hoping the next generation of cybersecurity researchers and developers and practitioners will be able to watch the video and get some ideas as to what we did, back in the 80s and 90s. And then I've also given some of the key keynote addresses I've given over the years. These include topics like malware, data mining for malware detection, as well as some other topics such as cloud-based assured information sharing and security and privacy for social media. And then, so today I'm talking about social media governance and fake news detection. So today's talk is not sort of more sort of historical talk, because this is my current area of research. And so I'm going to give a high-level presentation today because I give a keynote address on this topic. I believe it's going to be in May of 2021. And so I'll have a lot more technical information when I give the keynote address. So today is the last day of 2020, December 31st. And so tomorrow I'm taking the day off, January 1st, and then on January 2nd, maybe January 3rd, I'll continue to tape around 4 to 5 of the historical talks I've given over the years. Okay, so let me now share my screen. Let's see, yes. Good. So it is social media governance and fake news, because we are hearing so much about fake news. And so ensuring that the data quality social media is got quality data, accurate data, it's all part of governance. Of course, we've got to do research in order to ensure that the data is accurate and of high quality. Okay, so And this is my current research, but again, today's talk is more high level, and in May, I'm going to provide more technical details on how to go about detecting fake news. Okay, so the overview, social media governance, right? That's the, the major part of the presentation. And then discuss fake news and how we could detect fake news. It's a very, very challenging topic. In fact, we didn't really hear about fake news before the 2016 elections, right? And so now, almost every day, we hear about fake news, social media or otherwise. And then finally, how do we proceed? Okay, who are the major entities in social media involved in governance? So if you want to find out more details about a technical presentation I gave, which was on, I believe, a couple of days ago, not yesterday, maybe the day before, and that was on analyzing and securing social media. Sorry, no, that talk was on social media security and privacy. I did talk a couple of charts. I did present a couple of charts on analyzing our work on social media analytics. In fact, we have a patented analytics system, but the focus was more on what are the privacy concerns due to analytics and also what about security. Okay, so we are going beyond that in this presentation and talking about social media governance and as well as fake news detection. So I thought this particular topic was a sort of a fitting end to the year with so much talk about fake news. But that is also going to motivate us for next year to do research in this area. Next week, I'm going to give very likely I'll be giving a presentation on our work, more details on social media analytics and the system called Insight that we developed, okay? So in my presentation 2 days ago on social media security and privacy, I do give an introduction to social media, okay? So I'm not going to give any details. I'm assuming that, you all know what social media is all about. Of course, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and even LinkedIn, they are all types of social media. So the social media providers are Facebook and Twitter because they are the ones we hear a lot about. Organizational, corporate social media. So any organization, whether it be government, commercial, academic, or even nonprofit, they all have social media web pages, right? Social media pages, especially on Facebook, and they all Twitter. So then you have the users like all of us. So we are the researchers of social media, but we are also the users, all those who use social media. So by the way, I use social media, LinkedIn and Twitter, Instagram, and especially Facebook, but they are all used for professional purposes. And I do have one Twitter for professional, one Twitter, it's not personal, it's more on motivational, but I haven't sort of, tweeted anything on that yet, and hoping I can get started in 2021. Okay, so but the professional tweet at CyberUTD, I've been tweeting now for quite a few years. Anyway, coming back. So I'm going to talk about social media information governance and risk management. So if you take the CISSP, Certified Information Systems Security Professional, so I passed it in 2010, and I was a member until 2016, and then I let it lapse. So I really need to get back and see whether I can, get my membership back again. But in any case, very important topic, one of the modules is information governance and risk management. So the question I'm asking is, how can we apply whatever we have studied in that module in CISSP for social media? So we need to analyze the impact of social media with respect to security management, administration, and governance. What are the policies for social media? What are the standards, guidelines, procedures? And we also need to talk about regulations. That's a topic that's being discussed a lot these days. On the one hand, we should not censure what people are posting, but then we don't want people to post fake news. And also, we don't want people to, sort of bully others and also say nasty things about others, right? So we don't want that. That can cause depression. So we need to work with the social media companies. So I don't think we should condemn the companies, because these companies like Facebook and Twitter, they are of tremendous use for COVID-19, coronavirus spread, to epidemiologists, for emergency response, for military construction, and even reconstruction, and even during COVID-19, when we are all home, social media is quite useful. Otherwise, imagine we have no contact, let's say, with the outside world, personal contact, or hardly have any personal contact. And imagine if social media is taken away, many people will get very depressed. It's bad enough as it is without human contact, but imagine without social media contact. So with respect to fake news, we have to partner, and I believe we've got to work with the social media companies. So not just with Facebook and Twitter, but also we've got to work with Google, because they are the ones who are, the number one search engine company. So to make sure that accurate results are given to us. So these are all very important. And then there's Apple for smartphones and so on. So we need to work with these companies, right? As well as Amazon, all of these companies are critical, right, for our well-being. Imagine without Amazon, what we'll be doing today, right? Our food, our clothes, all that stuff, the day-to-day living, the stuff that we need. Almost all of us are ordering through Amazon because we are too scared for our lives, right? Which is rightfully so, to go to shops. Okay, so risk management and analysis. We really need to conduct risk analysis to see what are the effects and so on. What are the threats? Best practices. What are the best practices on the use of social media? How do we do information classification? What relevance does it have? And so 2 days ago, I talked about privacy in social media. Of course, we can detect, whatever we post, eventually our privacy could be violated, even though we want to sort of not divulge information, whether we are gay or straight, or in our case, our experiments were whether we were liberal or conservative. Okay. Roles and responsibilities. What are the roles and responsibilities of the various parties, organization, users, and so on? And information accuracy, fake news, false information, disinformation, misinformation. I'm going to go into it in more detail. So these are sort of the topics. And so what is security management, administration, and governance? So this is exactly I got from the CISSP modules that I was, I took the boot camp, and that was almost 11 years ago, and took the 6-hour exam and passed the first time. Anyway, I'm still a bit upset that I didn't, I let it lapse. Anyway, please don't do it, okay? It's a very, very important sort of exam and content if you want to have a career in cybersecurity, especially help working in the CISO, Chief Information Security Office, or even become a CISO yourself. Information security describes activities that relate to the protection of information and information infrastructure assets against the risk of loss, misuse, and disclosure or damage. Information security management describes controls that an organization needs to implement to ensure that it is sensibly managing these risks. The risks to these assets can be calculated by analysis of the following issues: threats to your assets. These are unwanted events that could cause the deliberate or accidental loss, damage, or misuse of the assets. Vulnerabilities, how susceptible your assets are to attack. Impact, the magnitude of the potential loss or the seriousness of the event. Question, what is the impact on social media on information security? So I just want to put a reference here. Sorry that I didn't do it earlier, because it's really important to know where this is coming from. And this is really from, it's CISSP, so ISC squared. CISSP module on govern and risk. Also, Sean Harris. Excellent book. Unfortunately, she's a brilliant lady. Unfortunately, she passed away at a very young age, probably around, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago. And it's such a loss to our cybersecurity community. And I was really shocked when I heard that she had passed away. Okay, so I just want to make sure that, let's see, I'm going to copy this because in case I need to use it to other modules. Okay, so I talked about it. So we need to figure out, right? So what is the impact? And some of the materials, so impact and so on, I'll be talking about it in my keynote address in May, more of the details. As I said, this is a fairly high level presentation. Security maintenance, administration and governance. What are the frameworks? If you look at the CISSP, standards that are available to assist organizations implement the appropriate programs and controls to mitigate risks are, for example, there's the British Standard 7799, ISO 17799, Information Technology Infrastructure Library, ITIL, and COBIT. Information Security Governance, or ISG, is a subject discipline of corporate governance focused on information security systems and their performance and risk management, okay? Establish and maintain a framework to provide assurance that information security strategies are aligned with business objectives and consistent with applicable laws and regulations. What is the impact? So what we need to ask is, what is the impact of social media on the frameworks? Do we have new kinds of frameworks for social media? And I'm not going to repeat all of this because, again, please make sure that this information, this reference is really throughout this governance process. And also the Sean Harris's book. Okay, now develop security management, administration, and governance. What is the strategy? We need to develop the information security strategy in support of business strategy and direction. So we need to get the senior management commitment and support. At least very minimum, you should go to the CISO, Chief Information Security Officer, who will in turn hopefully get the support of the Chief Operating Officer, and ultimately, of course, the Chief Executive Officer and the corporate board. Don't forget the board. Ensure that definitions of roles and responsibilities throughout the enterprise include information security governance activities, right? So you have the employees. So if it's a university, academia, there's a president, the vice president, a chancellor, vice chancellor. We've got the deans and the department heads and, you know, various roles, the professors and the students and the administrative folks. Establish reporting and communication channels that support information security governance activities. Identify current and potential legal and regulatory issues affecting information security and assess their impact on the enterprise. Establish and maintain information security policies that support business goals and objectives, right? All of these things we need to do. Ensure the development of procedures and guidelines. So if you look at the CISSP, they talk about procedures, guidelines, standards, and so on that support information security policies, develop business case for information security program investments. And we need to do all of this, but we need to keep social media in mind, right? It's not about, because we've got to do all of this for our day-to-day, for our systems, for our IT strategy and so on. But here we need to have social media in mind. And then I would also encourage you to listen to my presentation 2 days ago, which was on social media security and privacy. Okay, so security management, administration, and governance, policy, standards, guidelines. So, and I want to also mention, because this is again, I've taken, sorry, from the, as I said, from the, let's see, I've got to put a star here. Where's the star, star, star? Okay. So, and I want to make sure that I have this here. Sorry about that, but again, it's important. It's just, as I said, it's, okay. So what do we do here? Policies, they are the top tier or formalized security documents. These high-level documents offer a general statement about the organization's assets and what level of protection they should have, right? So these are the policies. Social media users, I mean, you are not going to post any personal things on your social media professional pages or university pages. Standards are tactical documents because they lay out specific steps or processes required to meet a certain requirements. If you want to post something, follow the UT Dallas standard and send it to our social media officer. A guideline is a recommendation or suggestion how things should be done. A procedure is a detailed step-by-step document that details exactly what is to be done. Again, the question I have, what are the appropriate policy standards, guidelines, and procedures for social media systems, okay? So again, we want to keep social media in mind for this particular for this particular topic, right? So this is, again, I want to also talk about, this is, I'm sure, the last one. Want to make sure that it's not sort of word to word, but again, I want to make sure that I give this proper reference. Oh. So, right. So this is, I hope I can make this. Let's see. I need to sort of get this into, sorry about it. It's still, let's see, let me do this 20 so I get some more space. And okay, that's fine. Okay, so now we talk about risk. Again, what does the CISSP module say? Risk is the likelihood that something bad will happen that causes harm to an information asset or a loss of an asset. There could be a hurricane, or there could be a cyber attack. A vulnerability is a weakness that could be used to endanger or cause harm to an information asset. So since we are talking about information, a vulnerability is sort of like, some sort of loophole in the information product we are using. If it's, say, hurricane in general, say, if you have a weak foundation, right? If it's a mobile home or something, it's vulnerable. A threat is anything man-made or act of nature that has the potential to cause harm. So cyber attack, hurricane, right? Risk is the likelihood that a hurricane would happen, right? So threat is a hurricane or a cyber attack. The likelihood that a threat will use a vulnerability to cause harm will, of course, create a risk, right? If we are locked up in the house and never go out and no communication with anyone, the chances of us getting COVID are practically nil, right? Zero. Unless, of course, we have to get our food. So let's say, my husband and I are right now working from home in Dallas. My husband is actually based in Boston, but he came just before COVID here. So he's working from Dallas. And so we are, we go out, we drive to sort of an empty parking lot at the university, and then we take walks probably 3 or 4 times a week. Otherwise, we do some exercise in our condo. But then we have some folks in our condo, right? I mean, the front desk, whenever we get food delivery, they come and leave it outside. And of course, I wait for about half an hour and then wear my gloves and mask and get the food in and then wipe it and so on. Of course, there's a slight risk there. But since we're not going to shops and the people we are we are dealing with are those in the condo, and they are very good about letting us know if there's anything that has happened. And so because of all that, we are fairly safe. So if we maintain this, our chances of getting COVID is, probably next to nothing, right? So the risk is very low. When the threat does use a vulnerability to inflict harm, it has an impact, right? So COVID-19, the coronavirus, COVID-19 is the illness, SARS-CoV-2, the novel coronavirus, right? That is a huge threat. And the vulnerability is that the humans, right? We are vulnerable, especially the older people, especially those who are not taking proper care of themselves, right? And the likelihood that the threat will use a vulnerability to cause harm creates a risk. So if we are opening ourselves to the coronavirus, yes, it is a huge risk. When a threat does use a vulnerability to inflict harm, of course, it's having an impact. And it should be pointed out that there's that it is not possible to identify all the risks, nor is it possible to eliminate all the risks. As I said, we are trying to be as isolated as possible, but it's not possible to eliminate all the risks. The remaining risk is called residual risk. What are the risks for social media systems, and who is responsible to conducting a risk analysis, right? If you read the CISSP module, they will talk about who should be conducting risk analysis. They are not, at least when I took the class, and I also did teach cybersecurity essentials, but we have not come across much information about social media risk analysis. Okay, what are the best practices? Usually best practices include job rotation, because we don't want one person to be on the job for a long time. Say, especially if you're a bank teller or something, you want the job to be reported because you want to prevent the risks and theft and so on. Job sharing, share a job within an organization. What is the equivalent? So one person, two people do a job. What is the equivalent to social media? Social media companies could implement job rotation and job sharing. An organization can also implement such best practices, but it may not be a good idea to change, say, the chief social media officer every few months. So you've got to have some continuity. So you've got to plan continuity, okay? And I'll talk about chief social media officer later on. Security management, administration, and governance. So what about information classification, right? It's essential to classify information according to its value. Is it private or private, public? Is it secret, unclassified? Again, how can information be classified in social media? Is everything public? And that's how we are doing it now, right? It's all public information, especially if it's a public social media like Facebook. But we can, have some, okay, we can control access through some access control policies, but again, it might be good idea. This is what my dream, but I haven't really done that work, is come up with some kind of a privacy controller or inference controller where Facebook can do some, whenever we post something, Facebook can do some analysis and ask us, do you really want to post this? Because with whatever you have posted previously, when you add this, your privacy could be violated, or the information you're posting could be top secret. Can we take advantage of the inference and privacy controllers we have developed? Okay, so I'm going to talk about inference controllers next week as one of those historical topics, okay? Okay, so now, social security management, administration, and governance. What are the roles and responsibilities? Okay, social media companies. Who decides the policies for Facebook or Twitter, right? Who decides the social media system, how the social media system is governed properly, or whether the social media system is governed properly? Organizations. Who in the organization is responsible? So when you are in Facebook, right, when you are a social media company such as Facebook, you got to, they have to govern their system, right? So there has to be a decision. Who in the organization is responsible for social media governance? Should there be chief social media officer? You can't have everyone post stuff, right, in the company. There has to be an organized way. So should this be a social media officer and his team, his or her team? Social media users, as social media users, we can post whatever information. Can we post whatever information can we, okay? It's important. Who decides whether the social media system is governed properly? So anyway, sorry that I'm doing this, but again, it's important to get okay. So as social media users, can we post whatever we want? Free speech versus offensive messages, and even false messages. People are saying free speech. So social media companies should be posting, it's not their responsibility. They are just providing a platform. But then what about cyberbullying and suicides and fake news, right? So we've got to work with the social media companies, keep them involved, and not sort of condemn them, because they are really providing a great service for us. Okay, so again, security management, administration, and governance. What is the role of the C-suite? That's the corporate officers and the board. And in the past, I've written articles as well as I've presented papers on cybersecurity in the boardroom, and that I presented last year. And this year there was a intelligence and security informatics conference in 2019. And then this year at the IEEE Cloud, I talked about cloud governance. And then at the IRI for Data Science Conference, I talked about AI and data science governance. And so what about social media governance? In each of those talks, I discussed what about the role of the C-suite and the board. And I got ideas to write this because I gave an interview in 2016, I believe sometime in the summer, to the Inc. magazine. And they did not publish everything I said about governance and so on for companies and what is the role of the corporate officers, but they took some of the nuggets and mentioned that in the article, right? So, and so I got those ideas and I published these papers and gave presentations on cybersecurity governance, cloud governance. And then I also talked about AI data science governance. And so now I'm working on social media governance, but my research, my technical research, well, this is technical too, in the sense that if you talk to some business people, they will say this is a very technical area, but more technical from machine learning and cybersecurity point of view, I'm doing some work on fake news. Okay, what are the roles and responsibilities of the C-suite, corporate officers, and the board with respect to social media? We have discussed the roles of the C-suite and the board for cybersecurity governance and the DSILML governance, cloud governance, and so on, okay? We are argued, so let me finish this also. I put cloud governance. And we have argued, sorry about, I should have made sure that, because I wanted to get it out today, because to leave us with some things to think about. Okay, so we have argued the need for cybersecurity, chief cybersecurity officer, chief information security officer, CISO, chief data officer, CDO, and chief AI officer, chief cloud officer, etc., etc. Do we need a chief social media officer? So there is this notion called chief marketing officer, CMO. Also, my question is, will it suffice for the person responsible for the social media content of the corporation to report to, say, the chief marketing officer? Or should we have a chief social media officer? Because marketing officer is marketing the products of the company, right? So I believe, since social media is a whole different kind of sort of, it's more technology based, but again, marketing officers use tools. I'm sort of in two minds about it, because I think chief social media officer should be given sort of the authority for posting. But when it comes to marketing the products, right, the social media officer he or she should consult with the chief marketing officer. And then with the emergence of fake news and cyberbullying, it is becoming extremely important for the C-suite and the board to be knowledgeable about the various issues and provide the support for a strong and ethical, we want a strong social media presence, right? And an ethical social media presence. That is very, very important. And that is why I believe that we really need to work with the social media companies, okay? So that is important. Now we go to very high level fake news. So various definitions I've gotten from various dictionaries and so on. Fake information from Wiki is a form of news consisting of deliberate disinformation or hoaxes spread via traditional news media, print and broadcast, or online social media. Right? A lot of things are happening in social media. Many of us are getting new, not myself. I still watch, read news whenever I can. I like reading newspapers and magazines, and I get my news on on the internet and so on. So, social media for me is, some news maybe. But anyway, but a lot of the younger folks are getting their news from social media. So it's really important that it has to be, they cannot, you don't want fake information, right? Hoaxes spread via traditional news, so many that I mean, attempts of suicide and actual suicides have been reported, right? False information, information that is not accurate or true. It could have malicious intent. So again, according to this definition, while fake, again from Wikipedia, while fake is deliberate, false could be deliberate, malicious, or not, right? Because if you don't have the correct information, innocently we might post false information. Disinformation, false information which is intended to mislead, especially propaganda issued by a government organization to a rival power or the media. It's again taken from the dictionary. So disinformation is a kind of fake information, but usually we talk about disinformation in terms of propaganda. Misinformation is false or inaccurate information. Examples of misinformation include false rumors or insults and pranks, while examples of more deliberate disinformation include malicious content such as hoax and propaganda. That's also from Wikipedia. What can social media systems do about this? That is sort of the, I won't say $1 million question, that is $1 billion question, right? Because this is what social media companies are there to provide us with information, a platform for us to share information. And so it appears from these definitions in the dictionaries and wiki, fake and disinformation and misinformation have got some sort of malicious content, whereas false, if a person is sort of, I won't call it ignorant, but doesn't know the real, somebody gives me the information, I trust that person, and maybe I shouldn't, but he or she has given me false information and I post it, right? So that is not accurate information, it's inaccurate, but I had no malicious intent. That's why we have to verify the sources, right? So double check before you post something, or say something like, oh, I heard, by the way, from someone, okay? And you may not want to mention the names of the person. So how can fake news be handled in social media? Okay, it's not just, right, technologies. Okay, we can develop techniques, technological solution. I'll come back to that. So let me look at the technological solution. As a technology person, I'm looking at artificial intelligence, in particular machine learning and data science. How can we apply that? And I'm also talking to, working with my colleague who has done some work on natural language processing. And so he's looking at some of the NLP kinds of stuff, and we need to analyze and then see, is it fake or not? It's a very difficult work. But one of the areas that I'm particularly looking at, where others are also working on this, is we've done a lot of work on provenance, right? Data provenance. We want to go trace the data back to where it came from. Okay, so if somebody is posting something on Facebook, and if we are not so sure, then we need to go and trace the data and go back and find where did it originate, and along the way, who could have provided disinformation, right? So data provenance techniques are really important. So these are some of the technological solutions, but we cannot work alone, right? Because we have to work with sociologists and psychologists, right? Sociologists talk about, social theories, who are likely to post bad information, and psychological folks, they can understand the brain of the people and try to figure out, who is likely, are these people depressed, looking at what they have posted. Psychologists may be able to analyze and say, oh, there's a bit of depression. It looks like this person is suffering from a bit of a depression. And so he or she may have posted, false information. I'm not saying fake information. So we need to work with psychologists, sociologists, and policy experts. And so what about legal aspects, right? If there's cyberbullying, I would say that if there's a suicide that has been committed, or attempted suicide, or young adults going to depression, then I think we need to get the law enforcement involved, right? It's very important. So the legal aspects are something that is, we cannot forget about it. And what should social media companies, organizations, and users do? Organizations must have very strict policies about what people post. And ultimately, if the organization is posting fake news, right, it's the organization's responsibility, right, if they post something on Facebook. And then, but what about Facebook, right? So both, I would say, have a responsibility. It's the organization's responsibility, the individual person's responsibility, but the social media companies are providing the platform, and they cannot simply say, oh, I'm going to wash my hands. You guys can do whatever you want. I'm providing the platform for you. But I believe that it's their responsibility, because they're not providing the platform for us for free. They are making money out of it, right? Because they are making money by all these companies advertising, right? If this advertisement stop, right, then these social media companies are not going to make money. So that is why, but on the other hand, as I said, social media companies are providing a great service. So why don't we all work together, right? Sociologists, psychologists, technologists, and the social media companies especially, working together to solve this very challenging problem, right? What are the roles and the responsibilities of the various individuals? So this is something that we have to be focused, we have to be vigilant, and it's the responsibility of every single person who is either using social media or providing content to social media or providing the platform for us to post content, because we want a safe society, a healthy society, a secure society, right? Another interesting thing is that the fake news, okay, I'm going to come back to the fake news, can also be posted by, right, generated by not humans, by bots, right? And these hackers are controlling these bots. And so if these hackers are controlling these bots, and bots go and generate all kind of fake news, then cybersecurity experts have to come, work with the provenance experts, go back to try to trace it back. So again, a big challenge. Is it humans? Are humans posting all this fake news? Or are they the bots, right? And these bots that are unleashed by the hackers. So that's something that we need to think about. So I'm going to talk about each of these topics. Fake news, social and psychological theories. Social scientists and psychologists are working on theories for handling fake news. For example, how long does it take for the fake news to become real news? For some people, different degrees for different people. Some people can get brainwashed completely. How often do people get brainwashed? As a technologist, I don't have the answer, but psychologists and sociologists will have a much better answer. Children, of course, could get brainwashed sooner than adults could get brainwashed, not that fast. But older people, that's, most vulnerable are the children and the older people, because they could get, brainwashed, in the sense older people have got forgetfulness, they've got, they could get, dementia and so on. So it's very sad. What are the consequences of fake news becoming real news, right? So what happens if we think it's fake, but it could become real? It's fake news. What I'm saying is it could be real, or we assume it's real and take actions. That could be devastating. What are the social theories, psychological theories? What theories we can use to make brainwashed people believe that they must change? And how can we intervene at the right time? Right intervention. We have to be vigilant. If we see someone posting suicidal messages on Facebook, we've got to be vigilant. Inform the parents, inform the police. That is important. Okay, so technologies of fake news detection. First, the machine learning techniques must develop models by using various training data. So do we get enough training data? If the news fake or not, or is the news fake or not, right? That's what we are asking for. Is the news fake or not, right? And then what we do is determine, then test the new information that is posted, determine if this is fake or not, okay? Okay, so actually what I want to do here is, okay, I'm talking about fake news and cybersecurity too. So that's, okay, is the news fake or not? So, right, determine if this is fake or not. What happened if new information is new fake information? So what happens? I'm sorry that I'm correcting it, so, but it's very important. What happens if new fake information is posted, right? So as new information, we could be very vigilant and quickly detect it. We need machine learning techniques to predict what kinds of fake news can be generated from the current real and fake news we have. Natural language processing techniques needed to analyze or need to analyze the content are needed to analyze the content. Entity resolution for handling disambiguation. So if you have disambiguation when NLP, things like A in one system, B in something else, things like that, we need to use entity disambiguation. What about data provenance analysis? This is very, very important. Where did the data come from? And so on. How do we make all of the technologies work together? Okay, so data provenance is crucial. Okay, so we need to keep track. Where did the data come from? Now, so here we are assuming people are posting fake news, but what about fake news and cybersecurity? What happens if the fake news is generated via cyber attacks and malicious bots? How can we trace the news to the malware and the bots? It's much more challenging. How can machine learning techniques help? What about data provenance analysis? How will the malware mutate? Bots can also change, right? That's the devastating thought. Can machine learning techniques be used to determine the mutation? How can the work on machine learning for social media attacks be expanded to include fake news detection due to attacks? So this mutation is a big problem. We are hearing about coronavirus, the novel coronavirus mutating. In some people, it mutates 23 times. It comes across as a new virus, right? So I read this article where they're saying, you go into a room and then you come out completely changed, new outfit, everything new. So normally, until they found out of this 23 mutations, it could mutate maybe 2 or 3 times. So you go into a room, then just wear a new hat or a new scarf or something like that, right? You don't change yourself, but then will the vaccines work? So a lot of our research has been on mutated malware, and malware is also using machine learning to decide how the best way to mutate to thwart the antivirus products, right? So the current antivirus products may not be able to detect the mutated malware. So the challenge for us is to develop solutions, and we've come up with techniques called novel class detection in stream analytics to detect the novel malware or the novel coronavirus. And so the challenge that we have is we don't have enough training data, right, for these novel mutated malware. So that's something that we are sort of struggling with these days with respect to mutated malware. But then when it comes to social media, right, how is the malware mutating? Malware is using data mining. So we need to study what sort of data mining is malware using? How can the work on machine learning for social media attacks, right? So be expanded. So we've done a lot of work on machine learning, data science for cybersecurity attacks. How can we expand that for fake news detection? And another challenging problem that we have is that these machine learning techniques themselves could be attacked. Right? We are using machine learning AI for healthcare, for this, for that, for social media, to come up with some useful nuggets for people. And if these machine learning techniques are attacked, right, because the adversary can find out what sort of model that we are using, right, and the data that we are using to train, it can thwart our models and our data, and then we cannot catch the adversary. So it sort of becomes game playing. So we've got to figure out what the adversary is up to, and then we need to act accordingly. And this, so I want to just add this, what happens, sorry, if the machine learning techniques are attacked. Okay, so So that's the challenge when it comes to cybersecurity, right? So that's the whole area has come to be known as adversarial machine learning, because the adversary can see what we are, learn about our models. And then we now learn about what the adversary is doing. How has the adversary mutated, or how has the adversary, has he or she caught on to what we are doing? Our machine learning models, we have to adapt our models. So we came up with adversarial support vector machine, and then it sort of becomes game playing between us and the adversary. Very, very challenging topics and very interesting. Okay, what about the legal aspects? Free speech versus hate speech. Debate has existed for perhaps for centuries. If the hate speech has truth and is based on opinions, then it is harder to argue about censorship, right? But fake news is not true or real. One must not be allowed to post whatever they feel like posting, right? And again, malicious news, right? Saying that this person is a bad person, certain things, like even if it's the truth, we don't want to out people who are gay because they may want to protect their privacy. That is extremely horrible, horrible thing to do, okay? So saying that so-and-so is a thief or a prostitute without any basis for those statements, right? And even if a person is a prostitute, it is none of our business to say that that person is a prostitute, right? Because, that's that person's privacy. And so I don't know whether we should out that person. I don't know whether it's, whether law enforcement expects us to tell them in confidence, but maybe if the law says, yes, we need to do that, but not out them on Facebook. Can we apply the laws for slander, right? Essentially, what we do in the real world should apply for online social media. But again, there is a problem here, right? Because with online social media, millions of people can read. So people can argue, right? If in the real world, this is agreed upon, it's fine to do it, then it should be fine in social media too, right? In theory, maybe yes, but I don't know whether we can do that in practice. What are the additional laws and regulations needed for social media? Okay, so that's what we've got to be concerned about. And yes, we do need lawyers, legal folks, and the policy experts to work on this. Okay, so what should social media companies, organizations, and users do? Social media companies, should they fact check every news that is posted? In the end, are they responsible for the posts? What are the laws for newspapers, right? So it's sort of like newspapers, right? We have editors of newspapers, they are writing, and then we submit articles, opinion columns, but New York Times, establishment, Washington Post, establishment, or New York Post, establishment, or television channels like MSNBC, establishment, CNN, establishment, Fox News, establishment, right? So are they responsible? If they are responsible, then social media companies should also be responsible, right? But again, that's the thing. These are things that we need to understand and work with them. As I said, social media is providing huge service, especially during these dark times, okay? Should organizations be responsible what the employees post on the official social media for the organization? Okay, should organizations have a chief social media officer who is responsible for all such things? I talked about it earlier. Should this person report to the head of communications or chief marketing officer? But again, social media has become so important that I think we need a separate role for that, right? Because it's a very important position. So social media users, should they take responsibility of what they post? Yes, they must take responsibility. Should they fact check before posting? Yes, if we are saying social media companies have to fact check, I believe the users also have to fact check what they are posting. But of course, if they are cyber attackers and posting stuff through bots, that's a different story. Then it becomes, I believe, criminal. Okay, fake news, how do we proceed now? Social media is just like the Wild West, because what? We are probably around 15 years old now, right? Social media. there are hardly any regulations or laws that govern social media. Even the internet is more or less the Wild West. But only thing is, it's become much more organized now than it was, say, some years ago, right? Appropriate governance frameworks are yet to be developed. The risks are not clear. Roles and responsibilities are not clearly defined. It's almost like we can do whatever we want on social media and post whatever we like. However, things are changing due to the intense interest and concerns in fake news, right? And sometimes people say things are fake news, but they are not really fake. They are real, right? Oftentimes I find, some people say, oh, it's fake news. No, fake news has become such a sort of a common term. Everything is fake news. No, everything is not fake news. A lot of it is accurate, correct, true news, okay? But of course, there is fake news. So what do we do, right? So it's easy for some people to make statements, it's all fake news. And it's easy for some others to, post fake news and say it's not fake news, or put real news and say, oh, it's fake news. I mean, it all gets so complicated. I don't even thinking about it, it's getting complicated. Right, technologists, lawyers, policymakers, regulators, sociologists, psychologists, they've all got to work together. And they have to work with the social media companies. And I think before I go, I want to add one sentence, right? And the social media must be involved in because, and as I'm saying, they are providing us with a great service. So we really don't want to not have social media. We have come so far, but let us sort of try to make this social media more useful and more safe and secure. That's what we want. Okay, so now, right. So our current research, my last chart on detecting fake news in social media. So again, we have done a lot of work on social media analytics. We've done work on social media security, social media privacy. So last week, 2 days ago, I talked about social media security and privacy. Next week, I'll talk about social media analytics. And then in May, I'm going to provide more technical details when I prepare for my keynote address. Our main focus is on applying data science and machine learning techniques for detecting information in social media that is not accurate. We also need to utilize NLP, natural language processing techniques, to analyze the information that is posted. Once you detect that the news is fake, then you have to trace it to the origin. For example, how can we use the data provenance management techniques we have developed over the years to determine the origin? We first started working on data provenance, I believe, in 2005. And we have a number of papers we have published. How can we apply that work? And what about some of the recent work on data provenance? What happens if the perpetrators are hackers who have unleashed bots? It becomes much more challenging. And the perpetrators could be nation states, right? It becomes even more challenging. How do we apply the cyber attack detection techniques to combat the bots? Is there a need to integrate this work with adversarial machine learning? Because what happens if the machine learning techniques are attacked? And continue with our research on security and privacy for social media. While we are doing all of this, we cannot forget about our main research, which is in security and privacy on social media, as well as social media analytics. Without a doubt, social media analytics is very useful for marketing purposes, for so many things, for social media companies, as well as for other companies. But it can also cause privacy violations. And I demonstrate that with some of our work that we have done in the lecture I gave 2 days ago, showing how, say, because many users may not want to mention their location, right? But from what they are posting, we can find out what their location is, or based on where their friends are, right? Friend of a friend, you are like your friend. So then we can extract location, the user's privacy is violated. And then we talked about what do we do about privacy and what do we do about security. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen. So again, social media is huge. It's a huge kind of technology, right? I mean, hugely important. I mean, it's a not huge technology, sorry. It's hugely important, right? Because every one of us almost are affected by social media, just like, you know, the internet, or most of us, I should say, because not everyone is on Facebook. But again, probably by now 2 billion people are likely on Facebook. So, and we have to, you know, these social media companies are really, you know, doing us a service, and it is really important for them to give us good service, right? So we are depending on so much, right, with these social media companies. And especially during these dark days, COVID days, these social media companies have provided us with enormous services, right? Because many of us could be, I know we are sane because of all the services being provided by these social media companies, right? So we have some contact with people, even though it's virtual. But we are also having this problem, people posting fake news, propaganda, you know, false news. It's really people are posting sort of false news because, you know, not sort of non-maliciously posting stuff is, I would say, based on experience, rarer than, you know, people posting maliciously false information. This false information could be devastating, right? And we are talking about fake news with elections and all kinds of stuff that's happening. You know, since 2016, we've been hearing about this fake news. But we have to be careful. Sometimes real, truthful news, people are saying fake, fake, fake. And news that are fake, people are believing, right? So what do we do? I mean, it's just very frustrating and annoying, right? So that is where we've got to also sort of figure out whose responsibility is this, right? Is it the social media company's responsibility, or is it the you know, users who are posting, and is it the organizations who are using social media? I believe it's everyone's responsibility, right? We cannot let the social media companies off the hook. At the same time, we cannot condemn them. We need to work with them. Okay, so social media, so I talked about sort of two aspects mainly, the governance aspects and also social media fake, you know, how to handle fake news. So I talked about all of our research. Going back to the governance, right, they're all sort of tightly related. If the social media company is governed properly, and if every organization, every person is following the roles and responsibilities set for them, then we may not have to worry so much about all these fake news and cyber attacks on social media and privacy violations and so on. So that is why social media governance is so important, right, for this fake news problem. And so to do that, we need to have someone in the organization responsible for the social media, right? So I'm saying chief social media officer. But then imagine you have a chief cloud officer, chief social media officer, chief AI officer, chief cybersecurity officer. How many and then somebody will say chief information officer, chief technology officer. How many such officers can you have? And do they all report to the CEO? He or she is going to be overwhelmed. What about reporting to the chief financial officer or chief operating officer? Maybe chief operating officer, because financial officer is going to be just focused on the finance of the company, the business strategy. So I've said cybersecurity strategy has to be closely intertwined with the business strategy. Similarly, social media strategy has to be also intertwined with the business strategy. And so what are the roles between the chief communication officer and the chief marketing officer and the chief social media officer, right? Should the communication officer have the chief, should the chief communication officer have the social media officer report to him or her? Because communication is much more than just social media. Earlier I said maybe not, because social media is so important. But again, the other hand is, how many chief officers can you have, right? So what I have done in this presentation, I think I have talked for about close to an hour. Yes. And, or maybe just, yeah. So I've sort of, in a way, set the stage for my talk in May, when I give a more detailed talk on the technologies, and especially focusing more. I'll talk a little bit about the governance and so on, but most of my talk is going to focus on technology for detecting fake news, discuss some of the other people's work, as well as discuss some of our work. And then I also, next week, right, I talked about, so essentially, oh, by the way, I do teach a course on security and privacy for social media, or analyzing and securing social media. And we also wrote a book in 2016 on analyzing and securing social media, okay? And so that book talks about social media analytics and privacy aspects of social media, as well as security aspects, okay? And so I teach a class. It used to be every fall, but now it's in the summer, because in the fall, I teach a class on big data security and privacy. And in the spring, I teach secure cloud computing. And so the first time big data security and privacy was taught in the fall of 2020. So summer, because I like to teach these courses, is going to be social media, analyzing and securing social media. However, this spring, because my colleague is on sabbatical, I'm teaching the class data and application security. I was the one who was the founder of this particular class in 2005 January, but my colleague is now, because I was sort of the expert in data and application security, but now so many of the younger professors, like my colleague, Professor Murad Kantajulu, is a top expert in the field. Of course, the real #1 expert in data and application security and privacy is my colleague and friend, Professor Elisa Bertino. And so anyway, at UT Dallas, and Professor Bertino is at Purdue, so we do a lot of collaborations. In fact, our data provenance work was in collaboration with Professor Bertino from Purdue and our other colleague and friend, Professor Ravi Sandhu, a top-notch researcher in access control. And he is from University of Texas, San Antonio. So we had a joint project. It was a $3 million project that between these three organizations, and we got some very interesting work. So anyway, coming back to, I'm digressing a bit, but coming back to the main point, Professor Murad Kantajulu is teaching he's a sabbatical, so I'm teaching the data and application security class. But then, so starting next year, next fall, I'll be teaching. Summer will be again analyzing and securing social media, fall big data security and privacy. And then in the spring, I might teach maybe secure cloud computing, or there's also another class I've got to teach on cybersecurity essentials, which is back to some of the classes I used to teach in a class I used to teach back for the summer, the last several years, not right now, because we have an interdisciplinary master's program on cybersecurity policy, so offered from our policy school, economics, policy, and political sciences, and together with computer science, engineering, and computer science. So our interdisciplinary master's program, so we need to teach cybersecurity essentials. That's important. I also like to talk about some of the top people who have done work in fake news. And one person that who has really a top expert, because I've sort of just got into this field and I'm trying to contribute, but a top expert on, just like I mentioned, Professor Elisa Bertino is the greatest in data and application security and privacy. Ravi Sandhu is top-notch in access control for secure systems. And the top person in social media analytics, and in particular, detecting fake news, is Professor Huan Liu from Arizona State University. He's really very, very good. And I'll also, while I'm talking about everyone, I also like to talk about two other folks, Professor J.W. Hahn from University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. He is very good in machine learning, especially data science. He's a top expert. And another person we also collaborate with, so it's with Professor J.W. Hahn and my other colleague who is also very good in data science, Professor Latifa Khan, works with J.W. Hahn. We developed this novel class patented technique on novel classes, which we are hoping to apply for zero-day attacks, mutated malware. And then the other professor that we work closely with is Professor Hinjin Chen. He's also a top expert in data science with applications. He's had successful startups, which is he developed the coupling to connect all the law enforcement databases, and that turned into a product, and he's had very successful startup on that, which he has, of course, sold. And so all of us work very closely in these areas. But at the University of Texas at Dallas, we have a very strong cybersecurity and data science team. And I have been working very closely on a lot of these topics I've mentioned in my presentations with Dr. Murad Kantajalu in data security and privacy, and Dr. Latifa Khan, their professors in machine learning and data science and data mining. And now we have another professor who's joined the data science team, who is Professor Feng Chen, who is really very good in data science. And we have several other professors who are very strong in cybersecurity. And I would strongly recommend for you all to read our presentation, view our presentation on UTD Cybersecurity Institute, which I've also posted on my YouTube channel. So I think I've talked long enough. I hope I've given, as I said, I've made several videos over these last 9 months, and mainly actually 7 months, since May, 7.5 months, because that's when I started making these videos. The first video was when I talked to the women, CyberW, Women in Cybersecurity Research. The conference organizers, the workshop organizer had posted the videos. So I also have a playlist under my channel. The playlist has all the videos where sort of I have appeared that others have posted, okay? So I think what I'm saying is 2020 was a very challenging year for all of us, right? If anyone says, oh, it has been a wonderful year, great, I don't know whether I can believe the person, right? But on the other hand, there's little things that I think I've benefited. I wouldn't have done these video presentations if I had been, if we had had a regular year. And I also wouldn't have, because I wouldn't have made, we would have gone, in-person conferences, right? And also something I wanted to mention, not the historical talks, right? It's very important to make this for the future generation. So that's also on my website, and my CV, just talk about, explains these videos I have made, right? And so what I'm trying to say is that, okay, and also I've sort of been reading also on, revising on topics like mathematics, which I wouldn't have had time, go back and study statistics and artificial intelligence and machine learning, and going back and looking at the basics, right? Because from time to time, I think it's important, because we get so carried away with all the technologies being developed. Sometimes we tend to forget about the basics. So I've been doing that too. And now that the vaccines are here, right, hopefully we'll all be getting them soon, so that we can all get back to face-to-face. As I said, nothing like face-to-face, because that's how we have been, we human beings have been brought up, right? And so with that, I'm going to end my presentations for the year, and I'll get back on my YouTube presentations, perhaps on Saturday, January 2nd, or maybe Sunday, January 3rd, maybe even Monday, January 4th, but I have so much to finish next week on these presentations, because I want to get them all out of the way, because our school starts the week of January 11th. So with that, I'm going to end, and I would like to wish all of you a very happy New Year for 2021. 2021. Okay. Thank you very much for listening to my presentation. And I'm going to now stop sharing. And again, thank you.